Hi there YouTube, my name is Simon. I make astrological videos and teach astrology and post them on the internet, and I also speak about spirituality and life and how that's intertwined. Welcome to my channel. Thanks very much for taking the time to come over and see what I have to say. I truly appreciate it. Today I'm going to be speaking about something that's super interesting, to be honest. In fact, it's a continuation of a series that I've just created called the Architecture in Consciousness, and I'm just quickly going through the signs within the Zodiac and kind of giving a sort of brief overview of how they work, but sort of giving the perspective of how they operate, like I said, on a more sort of like how they work as an engine, as the under the surface, not just sort of giving keywords of how Gemini is or how Aries is or how Sagittarius is, but more along the lines of how they fundamentally operate as an evolutionary force. Okay. So that's my sort of like goal today for you guys with the signs that I'm doing, and obviously with the series. If you haven't watched, if this is the first time you guys are watching this episode, please go over to number 1 and number 2 as well. I highly recommend watching that because there's a lot of information about what I do and how I explain the series and what I'm doing as well, and sort of give some insight so that you can understand more of the sort of language that I'm using within this channel. Okay. If you guys that have just returned and are watching this as well, thank you very much for coming. I do appreciate it. Obviously all the support and sort of happiness that I get basically when I get this opportunity to teach the nature of astrology in itself and raise our vibrations. It's really important for us to sort of operate in a higher sense of consciousness within our lives, because there's just lots of benefits, really, to be honest. I don't think there's more to be said about that, to be fair. So yeah. Okay guys, Gemini for instance is a super cool sign. I myself have got loads of Gemini, which is the reason as to why I'm actually able to do these videos. I love to speak, I love to share information, I love to gather information, and so on and so forth. My greatest enemy is my Scorpio foe and friend, for instance, because Scorpio doesn't like to just have sort of like the surface information. It wants to know what's beneath the surface, and Gemini's going, I don't really know anything more than that, it's not my job. But nevertheless, that's how it works. And when I get to Scorpio, I'll share that joke with you guys as well. But Gemini, for instance, is the sign of communication and connectivity. As I explained within the operation, the Gemini energy is the yang energy again. It's now going out from the center of consciousness, from source. And it's now basically saying, okay, Aries, I began, I gathered, I went out and I sort of found new beginnings, I found things, etc., etc. I used my Taurus sense of where to find my resources. I gathered resources, I got everything, and now Gemini is going to say, right, how am I going to print my books? How am I going to share this information? Where am I going to connect to? Who am I going to speak to? Who's my neighbor? All these type of questions within Gemini consciousness. It is essentially the energy of connectivity, and it allows us to connect all the dots and all the spaces, etc., etc. And there's actually from Gemini to Pisces and to Virgo, there's a connection that teaches us how they're all interlinked within each other. So within Gemini, it teaches us that everything is connected. I am sitting over here, I have a camera that's in front of me, which is part of the computer is part of the sort of like house, for instance. The house is part of the neighborhood is part of the state's part of the sort of country, and so on and so forth. You see how everything's connected. That's Gemini. Okay. And Gemini also rules the left brain, and it rules how we as human beings interpret the nature of the phenomena of reality. We give names to things. The reason why we give names to things is because it gives us a sense of security relative to our reality in which we are existing in, because it's in that sense of security through the naming that allows us to identify what it is that we are experiencing. So for instance, a chair cannot be a chair unless we give it the name the chair, right? Otherwise it's just exactly right. So it's like sitting there in uncomfortable silence going, so how do we make sense of everything that's around us? I know, we'll give it names. Sort of that process. But yeah, so Gemini, for instance, and Mercury and the third house, as you guys will see right now. I'm just going to switch over to my sort of like graphics options over there. There's Gemini, the third house within consciousness, and if you have a look on the other side, I've also added sort of like some keywords associated with that. So third house consciousness, again, it's the short process within our lives. It's about gathering information very, very quickly. It's about sharing information. It's about moving on, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing that I wanted to share with you guys that was really, really sort of close to my heart and really important to know is that Within our lives, we are born in a time where a lot of planets can be in the sign or the constellation Gemini. Okay. Now, as I've explained before, Gemini is a gathering information based a sign. It is when we walk into a room and we scan the room and we identify things, and it's through that identification that we build a picture. Okay, and one of the beautiful ways that I can explain this, and I highly encourage you guys to go look at my videos called the cardinal cross, the fixed cross, and the mutable cross, because in there I actually go in depth in how the zodiac actually is operating through our consciousness and how it's reflecting in our lives, for instance. But you walk into a room, and the first thing that you do is you sort of scan the room to identify the nature of what's going on, right? So you sort of like, okay, that goes there, that goes there, that goes there, and we do this on an unconscious level because it's such a normal process for us. And what we actually are invoking in over there is the relationship between Pisces, which is the understanding that everything is connected. We're sort of using our Virgo lens of discrimination and organization by looking at the chair and saying, okay, that goes there, and that's its usual place, and this goes over here, and that's what I put there, etc., etc. And we're also using the connection of Gemini. And Gemini, Pisces, and Virgo, or should I say, for instance, Mercury, in that case, are all connected in that process. Pretty neat, hey? So Gemini is connecting information, gathering information. Now, when we have planets in those sort of symbols, we generally find ourselves as human beings experiencing what we call sort of like ADHD, for instance, okay, or this attention span that is really sort of short and slow, etc., etc. I myself am actually experiencing a lot of Gemini within my own chart, and I find it very difficult to sort of concentrate. And the reason why that's the case is because inherently Gemini is not supposed to stay in one place for a very long time. It's supposed to continuously move, because it's the continual process of identifying things around us that allows us to actually identify the totality of everything. If we stayed in one place and just identified one thing and never saw everything else, we wouldn't actually get the totality of the picture. So in Gemini and the third house and Mercury, and if you've got this heavily emphasized in your charts and you see this in your charts, understand that part of your consciousness is not designed to stay in one place and just gather. It's about looking at everything in totality. What I do urge you guys to do is to, if it's obviously inhibiting your lives, then to find sort of like ways to go around that. And one of the ways is obviously an astrology reading, for instance. But what I'm saying here in this process is to try and sort of move away from this labeling process that is inherently Gemini as well, and try to understand the nature of how consciousness and humanity is actually working, and how the stars are working individually from the human experience, like how they are existing within our consciousness, and how we can actually see the truth in it. I think that's what I'm trying to say, encouraging the truth in the process over here, that what I just said right now. So I hope that was sort of like insightful and sort of stimulated some thought within that process. That's the point of this video, and obviously all the work that I do is to just stimulate some thoughts and such. So yeah, that's Gemini, for instance, guys. A very brief sort of overview. If you're interested in knowing more about the sign, comment below, or request a really sort of like in-depth recording where I just dedicate sort of 20 minutes to this archetype, because obviously in this particular instance I wasn't able to capture like the totality of it, but I really got the core essence of it, and I hope that sort of like helped. Yeah guys, thanks very much for listening. I highly recommend that you guys go watch some of my other videos as well that share sort of like other perspectives that I'm busy doing as well. I'm currently doing the Pluto story, which is relative to the evolution of humanity at the moment, and I think it's kind of cool because it kind of like brings into our reality and how that's operating for us. So there's lots of insights and such. And I'm also doing the Zodiac series, which like I said before, is teaching how the planets, sorry, not the planets, how the constellations connected to each other are creating life. And it's pretty cool, actually, to be honest. So go have a look on that. Just I'll actually put the links to the information below as well. And yeah, take a look at that. Other than that, guys, thanks very much for listening. I hope you have a fantastic day. Cheers. Bye.